My husband made me wait in the parking lot during music, his company Christmas party. Said I wasn't polished enough for his boss. So there I stood, freezing in December while he, music, partied inside. Then a black Escalade pulled up and the man who stepped out made my husband's face, music, go pale. Let me back up because I need you to understand how I even got to that parking lot in the first place. My name is, music, Nicole, and I'm a nurse at Children's Hospital. That night, I had just finished a double shift 16 hours of fours, vitals, and keeping scared kids calm while their parents fell apart. I was, music, exhausted, running on coffee and muscle memory when my phone buzzed. It was Garrett, music, my husband. He was begging me to come to his pharmaceutical company's Christmas party. Said it would mean everything to him, music, that his boss would be there, that it was important for his career. I should have, music, said no. I should have gone home, taken a hot shower, and collapsed into bed. But I loved him, so I said yes. I changed out of my scrubs in the hospital bathroom, pulling on this simple red dress I kept in my locker for emergencies. Nothing fancy, just something that didn't smell like antiseptic and long shifts. My hair was in its natural curls because I didn't have time to flat iron it, and honestly, I was too tired to care. I met Garrett in the parking garage, and the second I got in the car, I knew something was off. He kept glancing at me with this look on his face like he was trying to solve a problem. Finally, he asked if I'd done something different with my hair. I told him I didn't, music, have time to straighten it. He went quiet after that. The whole drive to the restaurant, his, music, phone kept buzzing. He was texting someone and every few seconds he'd glance at me, then back at, music, his phone, then out the window. I asked him if everything was okay and he said it, music, was fine, just work stuff. When we pulled up to this fancy steakhouse with valet parking and everything, I saw all these other couples walking in. The women were in designer dresses, hair done, makeup perfect. I looked down at my clearance rack dress and my nurse hands, the ones that no amount of lotion could completely soften, and I felt small. Garrett, music, must have felt me shrinking because he reached over and squeezed my hand. For a second, I thought he was going to tell me I looked beautiful. Instead, he said, music, he needed to ask me a favor. He wanted me to wait in the car just for 20, music, minutes, he said. Maybe 30. His boss was old school, apparently, and Garrett needed to set the right tone before I came in. He said it wasn't about me, that I was making it a bigger deal than it needed to be. He promised he'd come right back out and get me, that we'd walk in together once he'd smoothed things over. I sat there staring at him, trying to figure out if this was really happening. My husband was asking me to hide, to sit in a car like a secret he was ashamed of. But he was looking at me with those eyes, music, the same ones that convinced me to marry him 2 years ago. And he was saying he loved me, that he, music, just needed me to trust him. So I did. God help me. I did. Music. I watched him walk into that restaurant. Watched him laugh and shake hands with a blonde woman I recognized from his phone, Bethany, his co-worker, the one he was always texting. They walked in together like they were the couple, and I was just the problem he'd left in the parking lot. I sat there for 30 minutes, then 45, then an hour. I texted him, no response. I called, he declined it. I watched other couples arrive, music, watched them walk in, holding hands, laughing, normal. Nobody, music, else was hiding their wife in the car. Just Garrett, just me. After an hour and a half, I got out of the car, not to go inside, but because I couldn't, music, sit there anymore. I couldn't breathe. I found a music bench outside the restaurant, and I just sat there crying, trying to figure out when I became the kind of woman, music, who let a man treat her like this. An older black woman who worked at the restaurant came outside on her break, saw me, and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. She handed me a tissue and said, "Baby, nobody who's fine is crying outside a party in December." Then she went back, music, inside, and I was alone again. I pulled out my phone to call an Uber. I was done. I was going home, music, packing a bag, and leaving. I didn't care anymore. But before I could even open the app, I heard a music car door slam. I looked up and there was this black Cadillac Escalade, brand new, pulling right up to the front entrance. The driver got out, opened the back door, and out stepped a man I hadn't seen in 3 years. My father, Jerome Williams, 50-some, music, salt and pepper beard, wearing a coat that probably cost more than my car. He saw me sitting on music, that bench, and his whole face changed. He walked over and all he said was my name. Nicole. I couldn't even speak. I just, music, stared at him trying to understand how he was here, why he was here. He told me he knew about the party. Garrett's pharmaceutical company did business with his medical supply distribution firm. He was one of their biggest, music, contractors. My father, the man I'd cut out of my life because my husband said he, music, was too controlling, had been doing business with Garrett's company this whole time, and Garrett never, music, told me. I hadn't spoken to my father since the wedding. He didn't approve of Garrett, music, said he could see right through him, that Garrett was weak and insecure, and would spend our whole marriage trying to make me smaller so he could feel bigger. We had a huge fight. I told him he was wrong, that he didn't know Garrett like I did, that he, music, was just being controlling like always. Garrett encouraged me to cut him off. Said my, music, dad was toxic, that would be happier without his negativity. So, I did. I chose, music, my husband over my father, and I hadn't spoken to him since. But now, here he was looking at me sitting on a bench outside a party, and he asked me where my husband was. I couldn't say it. I couldn't admit out loud that Garrett had left, music, me in the parking lot like I was something to be ashamed of. My father looked through the restaurant window, saw Garrett inside with his arm around Beth's shoulder, laughing at something she said, and I watched. His jaw clench. He, music, turned back to me and asked, "He left you out here?" And I broke. I told him everything about the comments Garrett made about my hair, my clothes, my job. About how he'd been trying to get me to quit nursing because it wasn't prestigious enough. About how he'd changed since his promotion. How he was obsessed with image and status and fitting in with people who would never, music, accept him no matter how hard he tried. My father was quiet for a long time, the dangerous kind of quiet. Then he said, I knew that boy didn't deserve you. I snapped at him, told him not to say, I told you so. Not now. But he wasn't gloating. He said he should have been there anyway, that I was his daughter, and he should have fought harder to keep me in his. I pushed him away. Then he handed me his phone, and I saw all these photos he'd saved. Screenshots from my social media, pictures of me at work, my nursing awards, the charity 5K I ran last year. He'd been watching my life from a distance, keeping track of me even when I wanted nothing to do with him. He never stopped loving me. He looked at me and said, "Let's go inside." I told him I looked a mess, that I couldn't go in there like this. He said, "You look like my daughter. That's all that matters." So, we walked in together, his hand on my back, and the hostess recognized him immediately. "Mr. Williams, your table is ready." I watched Garrett look up from across the room, watched the color drain from his face. He rushed over with this fake smile, trying to shake my father's hand, saying he didn't know he'd be there. My father just looked at him and said, "Clearly." Garrett turned to me, called me babe, said he was just about to come get me. I said, "It's been an hour and a half." His boss walked over, all smiles, thrilled to see my father. He asked who I was and my father said, "My daughter, Nicole, the critical care nurse." Garrett's boss lit up. Said he didn't know Garrett's wife was Jerome Williams' daughter, and I watched it click. Garrett hadn't been ashamed of me. He wanted to use my father's connections without me there. Bethany appeared then, touching Garrett's arm, asking about some toast, and she froze when she saw all of us standing there. My father looked at her, then at Garrett. The whole room started watching. Garrett tried to pull me aside, said I was making a scene. I laughed. I actually laughed. I told him I'd been sitting outside for 2 hours and he was worried about me making a scene now. He had no answer. My father asked if this was the co-worker he'd been texting, and Garrett's whole face went red. His boss asked what was going on, and I was done. I was so done. I took off my coat, handed it to my father, and walked up to Garrett. I pulled off my wedding ring and dropped it into his champagne glass. I said, "I'm done." He started stammering, saying we could talk about this at home, but I told him there was no home anymore. Not for us. I walked out of that restaurant with my father, and I didn't look back. Everyone was watching, and I didn't care. For the first time in 2 years, I didn't care what anyone thought. My father's driver took us to an all-night diner and we sat in a booth until 3 o'clock in the morning just talking, making up for 3 years in one night. He offered me his guest house, told me to take all the time I needed. I cried. He held my hand across the table and said, "I got you, baby girl. I always got you." That was 3 months ago. I moved into my own apartment last month, filed for divorce, and picked up extra shifts at the hospital. My father and I have dinner every Sunday now, and he tells me stories about my mother that I'd forgotten. Garrett tried to call a few times, sent flowers once, but I never responded. His boss apparently wasn't too happy about the scene at the party, and from what I heard, Garrett's not with the company anymore. I don't know. I don't ask. I don't care. I spent 2 years making myself smaller for a man who wanted to keep me hidden in parking lots and back seats. That night, freezing on a bench outside a party I wasn't good enough to attend, I remembered who I was before him. I was Jerome Williams' daughter, strong, capable, worthy. I was a nurse who saved lives. I was enough exactly as I was.